In this video, I want to take you step by step from coming home from a photography shoot, walking around town, a vacation, whatever, someplace where you have just taken a bunch of images and now you want to get those into Lightroom, you want to process them, you want to pick some, process some, and export some off to share with folks on Facebook, Google+, wherever you share images. I want to go through those steps. So I did just that today. I wandered around a small town near where I live, took some pictures, nothing amazing or great, but I'm going to show you how to get them from your camera to your computer, where you should store them, suggestions for backups, and then walk through the process of quickly picking a few, editing them, and exporting them out somewhere. Now, the first choice you have when you come home or maybe you're just taking pictures in your house, wherever, doesn't matter. The first choice you have is how to get the images into the computer. Now, there's a little port on the side and the camera came with a little USB cable that you can plug right in there. And then if Lightroom is open, it'll wake up and we'll look at that in just a second and say, hey, you've just plugged in a device that's holding pictures. Would you like me to import them for you? The downside to that is you're using USB 2.0. It's very slow. It also does drain the camera's battery because the camera is doing some of the work of allowing the computer to pull those images off there. It's nothing huge. And so if you forget about it, there is the chance that your battery is going to completely die if you leave it plugged in. That will happen. Sometimes it goes to sleep, but sometimes it'll stay awake, so it's always a bummer to pick your camera up and have a dead battery. I almost always take the card out for that reason and a couple others. Take the card out and put it in something like this, a USB 3.0 card reader. Now, this is nice because it's got a variety of slots, so I do shoot compact flash sometimes and SD. It's got your micro SD too, so when I pull the GoPro file out, the GoPro card out, I can use that as well. And it's future-proof there in somewhat that it offers all of those. It is fast because it offers USB 3.0, and this is the one from Lexar, and it snaps down like that and kind of stores itself. I'm going to plug this in halfway now, though. I'm not going to plug it in all the way just yet. A warning, though, the downside of this method is that if you forget to take the card out of here and put it back in your camera, you could grab your camera and head out and not realize that you went out cardless. That's a bummer. So a couple different things you can do. If you're lucky enough to have more than one card, you can get a card that's ready to go, and as soon as you take one out, you plug another back in. It's kind of like I recommend always having a spare battery. That way, if you find your battery is dead, you should have one that was sitting in the charger or just off the charger. Swap it, and then you're good to go. So, either way, you're going to plug in something to your computer, and now you got to decide where to put them. But let's look at all that on the computer now. Alright, so I've got my USB 3.0 card reader here. I'm going to slide the little SD card in all of the way, and Lightroom should be smart enough to say, hey, you've just plugged in something and I am ready to begin importing. If it's not, and there's some times where it gets a little confused, you can simply come down here and hit the import button. And that's what I'm going to do now. I'm going to hit import, and it's going to ask me to select a source. Devices and files. So you can see the hard drives. There are times where you may already have images in a folder. You've brought them in for a variety of different reasons or ways, and you can import them right from that folder, or a device, which is what I have now. So I've got this card in, and here are the images that I have imported from walking around and having a little lunch today. Over on the right, or actually let's start at the top, the first option you have is how to bring these in. You can bring them in as a digital negative file, or you can bring them in as the camera raw files if you're shooting raw. If you're shooting JPEG, you're just going to bring them in as a JPEG. I don't typically choose to copy over as a DNG. It's just an extra step, an extra hassle that I don't think is necessary and offers you any benefits. So we're not going to be talking about it right now. You can also move the files over, or you can add them. Now, it's not going to let me do that actually for an SD card because it's smart enough to say this is something you're going to be unplugging in a few minutes. It doesn't make sense to allow you to have these options, but we can copy them and add them to our catalog. You have those options if you're adding them from a folder or files within your own stuff. Over here on the right, how do we want to handle these files? Well, first thing we got, is the type of previews we want built. Usually, standard is fine. That gives you a nice sized preview that you can work with and edit without having to load the full image until you need it to load the full image. If you have time, if you're going to know you're going to walk away from your computer for a while and you want your editing and your processing to go as fast as possible, and you have plenty of space, go ahead and have it build 1-to-1. That is full-size preview images that will allow you to work quickly through your images, but standard is fine, or you could have minimal down. Don't import suspected duplicates. Now, every time when you pull this card out, put it back in your camera, go take some more pictures without reformatting the card, you're going to come back to this computer again and plug it in, and you're going to have some pictures that were already imported plus some new pictures. It will be smart enough to say that I've already imported some of these and they will be grayed out. I suggest, though, that every time you get your card back in your camera, you do a reformat of that, or a format of that card. After you know the pictures have been successfully downloaded and they're safe and they're backed up, then you should format that card. That keeps the card as happy as possible and avoids having any cruft problems. You can also, on import, make a second copy someplace else, and so you could have a backup drive where these are automatically backed up to at the same time. I'm going to skip that for right now. Rename. This is completely up to you, but I do have my files renamed based on date and then the file name. So that gives a nice way to keep every image to be completely unique, because the time at which it's shot was not the same time as any other image shot. And I shoot enough images that I go above 10,000 every couple of months, and so you could end up with image 432, and then in a month or two, or a couple months more likely, end up with another image 432. And these are all going to be in separate folders, but it's nice for them to really have unique names. I'm going to leave the extension as it is. Now, during import, I can apply some developed settings, but I'm going to turn that off right now. But you can see that there are all of Lightroom's settings, plus my own presets, and a toolbox that I downloaded for free that's full of a bunch of junk. So I'm going to say none for now. But I could add some keywords right here that will be applied to all of these images. I'll just add one so we can see what it's like, the keyword sample. Now, the destination. This is where it starts to get fairly important. You can see that I've set up a subfolder for an earlier import, steel wool pictures, on 222. I'm going to change this now, and I'm going to say I start with the year, month, day, and then some type of descriptor. Now, this is just kind of a random walkabout, but I'll just say Greenfield lunch. And that's all written in there. Now that's going to be organized into one subfolder, and where is the question. So I have my hard drive, I have an external hard drive called Bristlecone, and I have a hard drive called Balsam, and then of course you can see the digital that it's plugged into. Now, I keep, because I'm working off of a laptop, I keep my images on an external hard drive, most of the time in Bristlecone. I'm still working off a 2013 folder, but I have moved over to the Photos B. So I'm going to select that folder. You could do this right on your hard drive if you have plenty of space. You could do this on an external drive as well. But I do suggest that you have a master folder, and then inside there subfolders for each import. You can move things around once they're in Lightroom quite easily. So if there were some of these images, if you like to keep your images categorized by, say, subject, and you want foods or something like that, you can do that. But I really suggest that you use the keywords to keep your images organized on top of folders. All right, so Photos B, and within that you can see if I scroll down here, I have all of these different folders over the last couple of months, and then I have a little gray one that shows me Greenfield lunch is going to be added there. And there's nothing else in this options really. So I'm just going to hit import, and it's going to start importing these pictures right now. Now over here on the left we can see that we have the folders, the hard drive, a folder that hard drive that isn't plugged in right now that has, and that's why it's grayed out, and the Bristlecone where we are exporting the images to, and we can see that Greenfield lunch is here, and it currently says 5. That number will slowly climb as it imports more and more pictures. In the top left corner it tells us that it's copying and importing the photos. off the drive, and you can see the little blue drive light is blinking as it pulls them off. After it does that, then it takes a little while to build the previews. Now we're just working with 17 images, and I have a fairly fast laptop. This is an i5, 8 gigabytes of RAM, and Lightroom runs fairly smoothly on here. Certainly working in the library is not nearly as taxing as working in the develop module. So I'm going to let that just continue to run a little bit and look at where we are in the library module. This is kind of your basic default landing for the Lightroom, You have your quick develop tools, and I very rarely use these, but you could use these here. You have an area to enter more keywords and some keyword suggestions based on keywords you frequently used in the past. And you can have keyword sets. And so if you've gone to the zoo and you know that you're going to, you go to the zoo often and you want to have animals and gorilla and, you know, what else? Elephants. Leave a comment with some other animals that live at the zoo because I'm drawing blanks. Snakes, and cheetahs, and giraffes. Okay, I got it now. And then you got your metadata, and it says who took these pictures, and because I have the camera, actually, it knows that information because I put that in the camera, and it shows you the lens you're using. And you have this little film strip look down here, and it tells you got 25 images, and you can see now that they've been renamed to the date, month, day format, or sorry, year, month, day, followed by the actual file name or the original file name. And so that's nice. Now, let's say we want to pick a couple of these. Let's find a couple that are good and I want to share with friends that kind of show my day. So I'm just going to double click one of them, opens it up. It's in a square format because I shot this through the live view with 1:1 ratio on, and so it is now displaying that to me, and I think many of my pictures are going to be like that, but not all of them. So here's working on my 70D user guide notes over lunch, and you know, this picture isn't great, but let's look at the next one and see if it's any different. The next one looks even softer, but you know what? I do want one of these because it tells the story of the day. So I'm going to hit the 1 key, which set its rating to 1, start it. There are a lot of different ways to mark the images you want to work with, but for me what works best is using the star rating and picking just a 1 to say I've picked that one. Now I shot the top of a mimosa drink a couple of times here, and let's see, I'm going to just look through and see which one I like best. I think I'm going to go with the first one. Go with the first one, mark that one. And if you have the caps lock key on, when you automatically mark something, it will jump to the next, and then I could hit 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, and then I'm just going to use the arrow keys to move right, move right. Any difference between these two? Maybe that one looks a little bit cleaner. Delicious lunch. All right, now tops of a building across the street, a little crooked. We'll fix that in a second. Sure, kind of interesting. And here we have a flag and a mural that I thought was interesting and kind of colorful. And that shows too much of the street. That cuts off a little bit of the flag. And then I got it mostly right there. Nice vibrant no trespassing sign. I like that. A little no fallout shelter. That's boring. Like the way the branches were framing this spire on the church. And let's see, but it was a little underexposed. You know what? Let's pick the underexposed one. We can work with that. And then I thought that this detail over here, and so I can click at any time and on the image, which is an automatic zoom, and it zooms. And notice how it was loading for a second. That was because I didn't have a full preview built, and so it was loading the full image. If I'd had full previews loaded or built on import, that would have been much quicker. So that's some neat detail in there. It's a little bright, but you know what? We'll pick that one. Yeah, okay. And I thought those eagles up there were interesting, but not quite that interesting. And another mural. So now what I could say is filter. These are the images that I picked. Over here on the right-hand side, I could filter and say, show me just the 1 stars. And what do I do with the other ones? Well, honestly, most of the time, I just leave them. If you want to be very careful, and if you know those are really just junk, total trash, you can here, I'll unfilter, and like this one, I know I'm never going to use this, I can hit the X key, and it's rejected. And then at some point, I can go up to my library, and I can say, oh, sorry, up to my photo, and I could say delete rejected photos and delete from disk. And permanently delete that file. It's off on a separate volume that Lightroom can't quite talk to with trash, so it's gone. And that image of the peak of the roof, which was right around here somewhere, is gone. And it's not retrievable. So most of the time I don't do that. Let's turn my filter back on. Let's go into the Develop module now. And this picture is quite warm. It was a little, the color's a little warm in the cafe, but it's a little too warm. And you know what I can do to adjust the white balance is I can grab this dropper and I can click on this white here. You can see that's a little too blue because, as I said, it was natural. It was actually warm in there. So I'm going to bring that up a little bit. I'm going to bring the clarity up a little bit to add just a little bit of punchiness, but really this image is kind of soft. I was shooting at f1.4, very, very close. Not crazy about that bit of green up there, but you know what? For this quick, that's good enough. I'm going to switch to this next image, and I can do that by clicking, or I can use the mouse. And again, I've got videos that really kind of go into playing with this, but I almost wonder what this would look like as a black and white, so I'm going to click black and white, and there it is, a black and white. You know, it's not quite centered, so I'm going to hit my crop tool, and I'm going to bring this in just a little bit. By default, it is locked to keep the same ratio you shot with. I'm going to bring that up just a little bit and really center it. I like it black and white. I'm going to add a little bit of clarity as well, just to bring a little bit of sharpness, but another f1.4, very close. It's not a great picture, but we're using this example here now. Next, we have the breakfast brunch food, and it was quite delicious. Again, part of the plate is cut off in each of those, so I'd like to go ahead and make that even and have it be basically cut off the same all the way around. All or nothing is what I'm going to say. I'm going to add just a little bit of clarity and maybe bring down the highlights and bring the shadows up a little bit, and a little tiny bit of vibrance and saturation like so. And you know what? I think that looks pretty good. And bring the saturation down a little bit. I'm very careful about that. Alright, so you're getting the idea, and basically this one I said was too crooked, so I'm going to hit the crop tool, and I'm going to click, and I'm going to drag until it becomes straighter. I can also go down here to lens correction and say enable lens correction. It's smart enough with most camera and lenses to know what I was shooting with, and so it makes some correction there. But we're still, because I was shooting up at a very big angle, I really don't like the way this looks, and I could bring this in a little bit more, but it's still going to be very angled at the edges because of the angle I was shooting it at. Let's skip over here. There's no trespassing sign, which actually looks pretty near perfect right as it is. Let's go up here to the spire, and I can turn this on. I could also highlight all of these guys and enable profile correction and hit sync, and then say make sure that all of these are synchronized, and it's going to go through real quick and make sure that lens correction is on and enabled for all of them. So if we go to any one of them now, we can see that it is on already. But let's come back to this one, and here I'm going to bring up the under basic again. I'm going to bring up the shadows, and I'm going to bring up the clarity again. And let's see if I bring down the highlights, if I can get a little more texture out of the sky. Not really, the clouds just start to look gray a little bit. But let's bring that up even a little bit more. Shooting with RAW gives you a lot of latitude, which I really like in post-production. It's nice to have images look beautiful straight out of the camera, but that's not always possible. And shooting RAW gives you the ability to make those change. So I got this whole area here but in the shot, but I really just like the reflection. So I'm going to bring this down. And again, we're seeing some of that distortion because of the angle I shot it at. But that's pretty close. And now if I do just a little bit of turning, I think that is quite straight. And I'm going to bring up the shadows here as well to kind of bring out that detail and bring up the clarity. So that really shows. A better picture would have been closer and standing on the roof of somebody's car to really get this detail, but you get the idea. So let's say after going through these that I say, well, this one is the really one I want to use. I'm going to turn caps lock off. That one, and that one. So now if we filter by 2 stars, I just went through and hit 2 stars, we're left with down to just a couple images, 5 images. One of the ways to make people think that you are an excellent photographer is to share a very selective number of images. So here they are. Here are the ones that I like. What's the next steps if I want to share them out with the world? Well, there's other things you can do here. You can map them so you get to tag them, geotag them. But really, all we need to do now is go to File, Export, and look at our options for exporting. Now, if I go back to the library real quick, let me show you the publish services. There are publish services you can publish directly to. I never set this up because it's tied to a catalog, and I often change catalogs from time to time. But it is something you could look into if you're interested. I find just hitting the export, this is the same as File, Export, getting them into a folder somewhere and then uploading them to be a nice way, and I have a lot of control over that. So you can see that I have some previous presets already. If I'm exporting for Facebook and blog, I could just hit here and hit export. I have ones for if I'm shooting a GoPro time lapse, and now I'm taking those still images out. And Instagram pictures, I've showed in other videos how to get pictures to Instagram from Lightroom. It's quite easy. It uses Dropbox. It's very, very nice. And also for exporting a cover photo out as well. So all different sizes more than anything. So let's click Facebook and blog and look at what's here. First place is where you're going to export these to on your hard drive. I have choose folder later, which is useful for a preset so it doesn't always put them in the same spot. You could have a folder set aside for this. I don't have it rename anything. I keep those existing names. If there's any videos, you can export that. Lightroom does handle videos, but you can't do much with them, so it's fine. Image format, JPEG, so it's now going to convert them from RAW to JPEG. What I love is I never had to think about them being RAW in Lightroom. They just were there. I could work with them, and when I export them, I don't need to think about anything because they get changed into JPEGs and I can throw them online. I have resized to fit with the width and the height set to be 2400 pixels. One of those sizes will be the longest. It doesn't automatically make them square. It just, if a size is already under 2400, it won't mess with it. That's what the don't enlarge is over here, and so it doesn't stretch them. And 2400, I have heard, is the sweet spot for images to go up to Facebook. If you're putting them up on Google, if you go slightly under this, they won't count against your file, your total file size. I think if they're under 2200 or 2000, can't remember for sure. I'll put a comment down below. Resolution actually doesn't matter at all unless you're printing. So somehow that got set to 144, but it really doesn't matter what that is. Now I did a little bit of clarity, which isn't necessarily the same as sharpen, so I could sharpen these for the screen and the amount low. If you've done some sharpening, or if you've added a lot of clarity, or if you really are putting these on Facebook, you want to be very careful and maybe not even turn this off, because very quickly images can look way over sharpened. It happens to me all the time, and I always get bummed out about it. All the metadata, sure. The mainstream media went wild with a couple of pieces of news a while back about people can track you from your cell phone pictures. Well, yes, they could, unless you're putting it up on Facebook, because Facebook strips all the metadata anyway, and that's one of the reasons I hate Facebook. But you can have it. If there was any location data written into these images, you could have it remove that. I leave that as the same. I don't have it put any watermark on for pictures I'm sharing with friends and family, but if it is a more professional setting and you are sharing with clients, you may want to consider a small watermark. But it is not something that you have to do. And after export, do nothing. So I'm going to hit export, and because I had it say pick a folder, or I'll pick a folder, that's coming up with this. And so I'm just going to go to my desktop and do a new folder and call it sample images and open. And now it's going to take these 5 files and it's going to export them out and put them on the desktop. One of the nice things about Lightroom is at any time if I come back in, and even though this is a very vibrant image, I want it to be black and white, I can go back into the library and I can switch it to black and white. Or that's one that I didn't do anything to. Let's say this image, and one of my friends looks at it after I've edited it and said, you've added way too much clarity. The potato or home fries look disgusting. And so I can just bring this back down to 0. you have complete control over your image, and none of those changes are locked in, and none of those changes actually affect your image until you export, which is nice. With JPEG images, every time you do a little bit of editing, there's a little bit of recompression to it, so over time images can look crummier and crummier. So if we bring up the desktop now, which is here, and I go to the desktop and look for sample images, there they are. They were just exported just now, all 5 of them, and now I can put those online. And there's a variety of different ways to do that. You should be comfortable with that. But that is the very basics of getting your images into Lightroom and doing a little bit of work with them and then sharing them out someplace else. I have more Lightroom tutorials. Some of them use the older Lightroom 4. All of the steps, though, are basically the same. I have ones that go into a little bit more detail about editing, how to tag keyword, how to use the map module. All of those are nice. And smart previews, which is a very nice feature if you are often traveling and you want to be able to edit your photos on the go when you're not connected to your external hard drive. Smart previews is something you should consider. All of these Lightroom videos are linked down below. If you have topics about Lightroom or other photography topics that you would like to see covered in a future video, just leave a comment down below. I'd be happy to oblige. And I thank you so much for watching. And if you haven't already, please subscribe. Thank you.